to solve real-world problems. Sandra?
Hi, everyone, and thank you to not only Bob, but the entire American University Kogod School of Business. We appreciate the long-standing support and collaboration. And I want to just hark back to some very important concepts that Tamika and Dave and the Dean mentioned, which is really around, this is not just a cool technology. This is actually a movement of global collaboration. And what I do every day, and Bob mentioned it, we build bridges. It's because this technology requires that mass collaboration of various stakeholders, whether it's academia and government and private sector, like no other time in recent history. Frankly, the you build it or I build it and they will come mentality just does not work in this space. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the live, real use cases for good that I think do not get enough attention. And frankly, oftentimes in mainstream media and even in crypto blockchain media, do not get enough applause because, they're not quite as sensationalist and make the headlines. But I think you are all here because you do want to hear about those good use cases where technology is actually being utilized to help people, groups of people, especially underserved, underrepresented, or frankly, boxed out, whether it's financial services or their identity or whatever it may be. Righting the wrongs of today's problems seems like a giant, overwhelming set of problems. But as Tamika alluded to, if all of us roll up our sleeves and all of us work together, which is exactly what's happening, it really doesn't seem so daunting. And for the first time, I just spoke to colleagues over in China this morning. There is a breath of, just optimism and positivity on the blockchain side about how we can work together, setting aside the differences, the cultural differences, the background differences around common goals. And I think that's an important thing to remember, is that unlike other technologies out there, this is truly borderless. This is truly one that requires the global collaboration. And frankly, it's up to us to decide what the rules of the road will be. It's still very early days, even though it's been around for a while. Now I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully it will work. There we are. And we're going to go through a couple use cases because, we like to talk about pragmatic things like what's actually going on in the world. Oops, hold on one second. Great. Well, I don't know how many of you guys, and I'm going to go back in time a little bit. We're going back to as early as 2013. And I don't know how many of you guys know Roya Mahboob. She currently actually resides in the US, in New York. But she is actually the Time 100 most influential people in 2013. And how did she get that moniker? Well, she is a pioneer in many senses of the word. She was the first Afghan woman CEO, tech CEO. She has been vilified, has been persecuted, has had death threats, because what she wants to do is educate women and give them jobs. And what she did was set up a tech company that would allow women to code and earn a living. And coding is actually a really great job opportunity for those women, especially if they are largely in their homes. As long as they have internet access and a computer and they learn the right skills, it's something that they can do on their own and on their own time. Well, that was great. Those challenges she met. Here's the second order of challenges that was discovered. She found out that the wages that she was paying her fellow team members were often taken away by the families, literally just stolen out of these women's pockets. And she needed to find another way to compensate them. And that's when she discovered Bitcoin. And she learned through various circles how to open up a wallet, how to secure it. And you have to remember, way back in 2012, 13, 14, I mean, it was pretty difficult. It wasn't really easy to access Bitcoin, but she figured it out. And she started paying her employees and colleagues in Bitcoin. Well, guess what? It was pretty hard for the family to start stealing the funds anymore, because they didn't obviously know what to do. And frankly, it opened up a whole nother corridor for her to empower women. So that's just one example. Fast forward to today. There's an initiative called Her Code, and the GBBC, alongside the LA Blockchain Lab and a couple really amazing folks, are very proud to support Roya's latest focus, which is to build an Afghan women's university focused on STEM. It would be the first of its kind. It's still very much a project in progress, but alongside that are courses. This one in particular, funded and supported by various donors, and then also professors from USC School of Engineering who are volunteering their time and obviously their skills to teach these teachers. So they've taught 4 teachers so far. Unfortunately, COVID hit, and it had to go on pause last year, but they've taught 4 teachers to code various different types of languages for blockchain. And the idea is that these teachers will go on to teach school, classes of somewhere between 15 and 30 girls, young girls and women, on how to code. And the program is, if it's of interest to you, please reach out to us, because it continues and will pick up in 2021 with any luck. So again, empowering women in education, especially in regions where infrastructure and frankly, the political climate is difficult. There are still ways for us to work with partners on the ground to make things happen. It's slow, but that doesn't mean that we should give up and not do anything at all. And I'm going to change tack to a very different organization, Procter & Gamble. Many of you may have heard. It's a very large corporation, Fortune 500, and they're focusing on water, SDG number 6, which is the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And they've launched a very ambitious initiative, which will use blockchain as part of the initiative, to basically encourage urban centers around the world to focus on using only 50 liters of water. The average household, when they looked at the data around how much water is used, the vast majority of the energy usage is actually around the hot water. And it's like 200 liters as opposed to 50. So we're using somewhere between 4 to 8 times what we should be using. And so there are a number of initiatives, I think starting in LA, Mexico City, Shanghai, where they've got apartment buildings that they've worked with, who will be instituting a series of incentives that P&G will be sponsoring through an app. And I suggest looking out for that. Yes, there is a blockchain component, but they're not leading with the blockchain component. They're leading with how do we conserve water, and especially in urban areas that are where water scarcity is a real issue, water resources is a real issue. How do we enable better behavior? For those of you who are not familiar, P&G products pretty much touch water. Every household, every house in our household, or every room in our household, I should say, which have water. So whether it's your laundry room, your bathroom, your kitchen, you probably have a P&G product sitting there, which also makes a lot of sense as to why they're focusing on this. Another one, many of you would have heard, the World Food Program was Nobel Peace Prize winner for 2020. We're very proud of our GBC member for such an amazing honor. They've done amazing work, obviously, for decades. They are working with another group called Producers Direct in the UK to focus on farmers in Peru. I don't know how many of you know this, but oftentimes farmers in Peru are family-based farmers, meaning the entire family gets involved. But unfortunately, due to old laws and frankly, just the way culturally things are set up, usually the title or the registration of the farm is just with the father or the husband. And if something happens where the father goes away or something, bad happens to the family, it's often a fight for the woman to actually be recognized as the bona fide holder of that farm. And so you have an identity issue, you have an empowerment issue, you have an equality issue. And there's a project underway where they're working with the Peruvian cooperative to level set that. And again, there is a blockchain component to it, but they're leading with the problem first and layering in blockchain technology amongst other technologies to solve for it. And many of you have probably heard of Heifer International. It is a major nonprofit organization where you could adopt a livestock farm animal and then donate it to somebody around the world. Believe it or not, there's an initiative going on right in the USA, in Arkansas. And they've linked up with the BitGive Foundation, which, full disclosure, I sit on the board of that as treasurer. It is a nonprofit focusing on Bitcoin giving, and they've produced a software called GiveTrack. And that software promotes transparency and fund tracking. One of the use cases that comes up a lot in the nonprofit NGO space is, how do we track funds? How do donors know where their money is going? Because if that were trackable, then perhaps there would be less noise around, giving, and especially international giving. GiveTrack starts to solve that problem. And what's happening in Arkansas right now, our small farmers are being offered ways to buy very expensive farming equipment with the donations that they're raising through this initiative. Again, it's small, but it's live. And for those of you who are interested, please check out the BitGive Foundation website. And then you see some familiar faces here, I'm sure, Dave Treat being one of them. They're working on some amazing standardization and tokenization projects, one of which I want to highlight, which is very important, the carbon credit market. So for those who've been around long enough to remember, carbon credits got launched decade plus ago, and it failed. Just did not have the right blend of supply and demand to actually be tradable. A lot of exchanges got started and frankly, subsequently closed shop. It just never took off as something that people adopted, people used, people traded, people trusted. And some of it actually had to do with the verification of whether, when someone issued a carbon credit, that when it went from point A to point B, that it was actually true, and that everything behind it was actually true. And I think one of the things that blockchain can do, and what this group of folks are working on, plus many others, is how do we tokenize carbon credits, but then beyond just tokenizing it, automating some of these processes, making sure that it is bona fide so that you don't have double spend issues, you don't have credential issues, like, is this a real carbon credit, is it not? Is it truly where it says it's from? Can it truly be traded and utilized the way it's being utilized? And I think bringing light to the carbon credit market will have massive potential impact to what we're trying to achieve globally on climate action and climate change. But this involves both investors, traders, and those activists that are very focused on this. So there's a lot of components still to be done, but I find this area particularly exciting. People are getting it. And I'm going to leave you with one that's a little bit of an oddball one. It's different, but it's happening now. And the reason why I think this actually has a lot to do with social impact is because it actually underscores new ways that we are collaborating that just didn't happen before. So the New York State Department of Financial Services, NYDFS, is running their first ever tech sprint, where they've got lots of private sector companies, as well as other central banks, regulators, nonprofit organizations. The GBC has been very proud to support this, to solve for a very critical problem. They want to improve the way regulatory reporting occurs. And right now they're starting with virtual currency reporting, but there's no stopping the solution as it evolves to also apply to all traditional markets. And I think something that is very unique about what's going on here is, instead of the regulator being considered this big scary monolith that people only really want to go talk to if they have to, this is a much more collaborative, open, let's work on solutions together, let's bring the best minds together to solve for a good. And the reason why I say it's a good is because if we have better regulatory reporting not only does it make life easier for the regulator, whose job is to oversee and to protect with regards to financial stability, but beyond that, it also helps to create a way for multi-stakeholders who have a vested interest, whether you're a trading house, crypto platform, or regulator, to promote safety in financial services. No one should, I mean, unless you're a bad actor, I guess, everyone should be behind this. And so I think the concept around using blockchain and its attributes to help risk mitigate is a topic that's not talked about enough. And it's not just financial services, it's actually many different other areas. And I think, you know, with the partners that we've got here, AIR is another one you guys should look into, Alliance for Innovative Regulation. I think you have some really interesting actors now coming together. And for me, I come from the banking space. When I first started off, I don't recall situations where you had this kind of mass collaboration of different stakeholders. And I think that's something that's an upward trend. Public-private partnerships are also an upward trend. And I think these are good things that we should be encouraging and working towards. So with that, I want to thank you all, because this is a unique opportunity for us to highlight what's good in the space, both on the blockchain and crypto side. And I hope if any of you are motivated such and you're not already involved, whether you are interested in sales, marketing, coding, it doesn't matter. This industry is growing and we need each and every one of you. We just have to find a spot to start and get going, because it's go time. Thanks very much.